So,
Will you give me a copy of whatever you write?
oh, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm going to do an analysis, like a 4-page analysis. And,
Oh, well.
with citations. We have to use the readings. So we've got a reader, and we're reading from Zinn, and this woman, Roxanne.
Howard Zinn?
Howard Zinn, yeah.
Really?
And
what else?
Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, she wrote an indigenous people's history of the United States. And there's another woman, Jean Failzer, who wrote Driven Out, which is about the Chinese immigration and all that stuff. And there's some other feminist texts that I'm probably going to reference depending on what we bring up. Really, I'm going to play it by ear, because you're a smart lady, you've got a lot to say, so...
If I can remember anything of my history. Yes.
All right, well, let's start. When and where were you born?
I was born in Midtown Manhattan, East End Avenue Doctors Hospital, January 8th, 1949.
Wow.
Yeah.
Midtown Manhattan.
Right next door to Gracie Mansion, the governor's mansion.
Yeah. Cool. What is your first memory?
What is my very first memory
Earliest memory.
is, I know exactly what it was. I was probably about maybe 10 months old, and I was crawling down the hallway, chasing after my older sister and brother and a friend, and they were headed for a closet where I knew there were games. And they were getting down into the closet, and I couldn't get there fast enough.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, isn't it funny?
It's a good memory.
Very clear.
What can you tell me about your parents?
That would take months. Okay, let's see, the brief form. My parents were born in Hangzhou, Hangzhou, China, and lived in Shanghai most of their time in China. The two families knew each other, and my father's brother married my mother's sister. But my father was married and to somebody else and had 3 children. And so, and he was 12 years older than my mother, just like Lynn is with me. And he had 3 children.
Interesting.
Yeah, were lots of parallels. But my father was like considered to be the most eligible young man in China at that time. He was brilliant. He was a professor. He graduated from college at 16. He translated for Dr. Sun Yat-sen. He spoke the Queen's English. He became a banker. He became director of Shanghai Commercial Bank. He was a chemistry major. He had a beautiful voice. He was very elegant and worked along the Bund in Shanghai and came from this aristocratic family. So, and then later on he became the president of China Travel Service, which ran all the railway and transportation and hotel system in China. So huge.
Yeah.
So he would go around buying hotels or deciding where the train should run or something like that. So my mother's family was a very aristocratic family, and her father, her father was a government official who then later became a philosopher hermit and died in the mountains surrounded by these monks. So, and I've gone to see his grave and seen the monastery, and they still tend his grave. So it's really a strange thing. But her background was, she was very well educated. She went to college and became a sociologist. And she transformed the orphanage system in China. And so there are many stories about her. But then when the Japanese-Chinese War broke out, she took her mother and a nephew and a nanny and another relative and got them into the interior of China to escape. They had a very dramatic escape through the Japanese lines from Shanghai to get to the interior, to Chongqing.
Was this in 1931 or 19...
This would have been, let's see, 34?
41.
41.
41.
Sorry. Oh yeah, 41, of course, it would be 41.
40.
And so my father went ahead and bought hotels along the path so they'd have a place to stay.
That's excellent.
And eventually they came out separately. He came out for China Travel Service and for the bank. But she came out in a very unusual way. She took the national exams, and she was placed the #1 woman out of, I think, 17 women who managed to get out. So she came out to go to graduate school. She was going to go to UCLA in sociology. But by then, he was divorced. They knew they were in love, and they wanted to, so they came here, and somewhere I have a newspaper clipping about how the lovely Miss Liu arrives, and they got married in San Francisco, stayed at the St. Francis. And then China closed behind them, and they made a very huge decision at that point not to go back, because that meant they gave up their wealth, everything, and their family. And so if they had gone back, my father was being courted by both Mao Zedong and the nationalists, Chiang Kai-shek, so to be the prime minister.
Yeah.
And he realized both sides were corrupt, and so he made the decision to stay in the U.S. So it was a very deliberate thing.
What brought them to New York?
Originally the bank. Yeah.
Interesting story. I know that's the brief form too.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you grow up, and what can you tell me about where you
Okay, so 3 years in New York City, and then they decided it was a horrible place to raise children. And so they they had lost everything. So he had to start over, and he got a job in Cincinnati, Ohio, for a raw cotton manufacturing company, Railway Supply and Manufacturing, and my mother cried and cried and said, "What is this thing called Ohio?" They got there, and
You still cry.
and it was pretty unbelievable, because Chinese were not welcomed. So
Yeah, it must have been like some of the first Chinese faces to
yeah,
grace
absolutely.
the scene in
Yeah,
Cincinnati.
yeah. And then I was there until all the way through high school.
And then when did you come here?
I came here we came in '77, so there's a long time in between.
Have you ever experienced discrimination?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Let's see, the John Birch Society came to our door and told us to get out of town.
Wow.
That was for starters.
Jeez.
In Cincinnati. The first swim club that came up in our neighborhood refused to let us in. Eventually they changed it because some blacks were applying, and they figured we were better than the blacks,
Sure.
so they could say they weren't being discriminatory.
Yeah.
And my friends would have birthday parties at golf courses or country clubs, and I couldn't go. Things like that.
That's really...
Yeah.
Wow. Can you remember a time when something on the news, something you saw in the news, current affairs, had a direct impact on your life?
Yeah, many times. Let's see. Well, during the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
my then boyfriend was a guy from Yale, and he was the youngest guy to refuse the deferments. He had a 4F physical. He had the 2S student, and he had a CO. So he definitely wouldn't have gone, but he burned his card and then became very famous, and then we were surrounded by the Boston Five, so this William Sloane Coffin and Benjamin Spock and Michael Ferber and those people. They were at my place all the time. So so all that news was very direct. We were in the news.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Larry Francis.
What the? Hello? Oh, it started, didn't it? Yeah.
Let's see, I guess this sort of
Thank you,
ties
thank
into
you.
that.
Hang on a second. Lynn?
Hang on.
Lynn? Do you want to take it inside?
Paul wants to know if he can come over.
I know.
Yeah, come on over.
We can move. We'll move her.
No, move inside.
Oh, okay. Because we can also move.
Well, why don't you then? It'd be easier for you to move.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. It's the Women's World Cup final
Oh, that's right,
in
yeah.
Vancouver, and Raylan is there watching.
Really?
Raymond's at the game.
That's amazing.